Captain Vren stood in the observation deck of the Galactic Council headquarters, staring at the massive holographic map that filled the entire chamber. Thousands of star systems glowed in soft blue light, each one catalogued and claimed by one of the 47 member species. Trade routes appeared as golden threads connecting worlds. Military outposts blinked green. Diplomatic stations pulsed white. Everything was organized, documented, and under control. Everything except one section. In the outer rim of the mapped galaxy, a region of space glowed angry red. No trade routes touched it. No outposts guarded its borders. No claims had been filed for any world within its boundaries. The label floating above it read simply, Grid Sector 7719, unauthorized entry. Most species had another name for it. They called it the Silent Territory. Others called it the Dead Zone. But the official council records used the most accurate name, Human Space. Vren was a Kalathi, a species descended from pack hunters who had climbed to the top of their world's food chain through teamwork and intelligence. He stood nearly 7 feet tall, covered in short gray fur with amber eyes that could track movement in near darkness. His people had explored dozens of worlds before joining the Galactic Council 3,000 years ago. They prided themselves on their courage and curiosity. But even the Kalathi avoided human space. 17 expeditions, said Administrator Cole, a insectoid Vrin who served as the Council's chief of exploration. Her translated voice came through the communication device at her throat. 17 ships, 412 crew members from 15 different species, not one came back. Vren turned from the map to face her. No distress signals? None. No final transmissions. No debris fields that we could detect from our side of the border. They crossed into human space and simply vanished. Cole's antenna twitched, a sign of distress in her species. We've tried sending unmanned probes. They stopped transmitting the moment they crossed the boundary. We've tried long-range scans. The entire sector is somehow shielded from our sensors. We know humans are there because we have historical records of first contact, 400 years ago. But since then, nothing. Vren walked closer to the holographic display, studying the red zone. It wasn't a small territory. Human space encompassed nearly 300 star systems, including their home world of Earth. What do we know about them from the first contact? Cole pulled up an ancient file. Grainy images appeared in the air, showing bipedal creatures with smooth skin and an unusual amount of hair only on their heads. They looked fragile compared to most species with no natural armor, no claws, no enhanced strength. They called themselves humans, carbon-based life from a Class M world. They had just achieved faster-than-light capability when our scouts encountered them. The initial reports described them as curious, adaptable, and surprisingly friendly for a species so young. Friendly, Vren repeated. And yet every ship we send disappears. That's why the Council is authorizing one final expedition. Your expedition, Captain. Cole's large compound eyes focused on him. The Wandering Star is the finest exploration vessel we've ever built. Your crew represents the best specialists from 6 different species. You have technology that can survive inside a star and weapons that can crack a moon. If anyone can enter human space and return, it's you. Vren felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. What are our objectives? Make contact. Learn what happened to the previous expeditions. Discover why humans have isolated themselves, and most importantly, come back alive. Cole paused. The Council needs to know if humans represent a threat. We need to know if we should prepare for war. 3 weeks later, the Wandering Star approached the boundary of human space. Vren sat in the captain's chair, surrounded by his bridge crew. To his left was Nina Cole, his human-looking Zentari first, officer whose species had evolved on a world with gravity twice that of Earth. At the weapons station sat Cross, a 4-armed mantid whose reflexes were faster than any computer. The navigation console was controlled by Pyle, a floating jellyfish-like aquarian who lived in a tank of specialized fluid. We're approaching the border, Pyle announced, their translated voice calm and melodic. 5 minutes to the boundary. Vren activated the ship-wide communication system. All hands, this is the captain. We're about to enter human space. Stay alert and report anything unusual immediately. The next 4 minutes passed in tense silence. Vren watched the view screen as they drew closer to the invisible line that marked the edge of known space. He thought about the 412 people who had crossed this boundary before him. What had they seen? What had they found? Were they dead or something worse? Crossing the boundary in 3, 2, 1, Pyle counted down. The ship passed through empty space. Nothing changed. No alarms, no attacks, no mysterious forces, just darkness and distant stars. All systems normal, Nina reported. Sensors are functioning. Shields are up. Weapons are ready. Vren allowed himself to breathe. Begin scanning for any signs of the previous expeditions. What they found made his blood run cold. Over the next hour, the sensors picked up debris scattered throughout the border region. Pieces of hull plating, sections of engine components, life pod fragments. Every piece matched the missing ships. The wandering star moved closer to investigate. Cross brought up detailed scans on the main screen. Captain, I'm reading something strange. There's no weapon damage on any of this debris. No energy burns, no impact craters, no signs of combat at all. Then what destroyed them? Nina asked. Nothing destroyed them, Cross replied, his voice puzzled. The ships are intact. They're just empty. Look at this life pod. The seals were opened from the inside. The safety systems show a normal, controlled opening. Whoever was inside left voluntarily. Vren stood up from his chair and moved closer to the screen. Scan for life signs. Any at all. Nothing, Captain. No bodies. No biological traces. It's like the crews just walked out into space and disappeared. Before Vren could respond, every console on the bridge lit up simultaneously. Alarms began blaring. Pyle's tentacles worked frantically over the navigation controls. Captain, we're receiving coordinates. They're being downloaded directly into our navigation computer. I can't stop it. Source? Vren demanded. Unknown. The transmission is coming from deeper in human space. It's strong, clear, and using protocols that are older than the Galactic Council itself. Pyle paused, studying their screen. Captain, there's a message attached. Audio only. It's in our language. Play it. A pleasant, artificial voice filled the bridge. It sounded friendly, almost cheerful. Welcome to human territory. This is Gateway 7 Automated Greeting System. We detected your vessel crossing the border and want to extend our warmest welcome. We understand that space travel is difficult and that you've come a long way. Please follow the coordinates provided to Gateway 7 station for standard quarantine procedures and diplomatic processing. We apologize for any inconvenience and look forward to meeting you. Safe travels. The message ended. The bridge fell silent. Nina spoke first. They're inviting us to dock. It's a trap, Cross said firmly. It has to be. Why else would 17 expeditions disappear? Vren looked at the debris field surrounding them, then at the coordinates blinking on their screens. Every instinct told him to turn around, to run back to council space and report what they'd found. But he thought about his orders. He thought about the 412 missing people, and he thought about the friendly, cheerful voice welcoming them home. Set course for Gateway 7, he ordered, but keep shields at maximum and weapons ready. If this is a trap, we'll be ready for it. The wandering star turned toward the coordinates and accelerated into the unknown. Behind them, the debris of 17 ships floated silent in the void, grave markers for expeditions that came before. Ahead of them, somewhere in the darkness, waited answers. And humans. Vren gripped the armrests of his chair and prepared to discover why the galactic map stopped at human space, and why no explorer ever returned. The journey to Gateway 7 took 6 hours. 6 hours of tense silence as the wandering star moved deeper into human space. Vren spent most of that time reviewing what little information the Council had about humans. There wasn't much. A few images from 4 centuries ago, basic biological data, notes about their rapid technological advancement, but nothing that explained why they'd isolated themselves or what happened to the missing expeditions. Station coming into visual range, Pyle announced. The view screen flickered and showed the station. Vren felt his breath catch. Gateway 7 was massive, easily the size of a small moon. It was built in a ring structure that rotated slowly, creating artificial gravity. Lights glowed from thousands of windows. Docking bays lined the outer surface like open mouths. Ships moved around it, some recognizable as human designs, others completely unknown. And everything was clean, maintained, and clearly operational. "It's beautiful," Nina whispered. Cross checked his weapons display. "It's also heavily armed." "I'm reading defensive platforms hidden throughout the structure. Energy shields strong enough to withstand a fleet assault. And those aren't cargo ships moving around. Some of them are military vessels." Vren studied the station carefully. "They built this to guard their border. This isn't a diplomatic outpost. It's a fortress that looks like a welcome center." Another transmission came through, the same pleasant artificial voice. "Wandering Star, you are cleared for docking Bay 12. Please proceed at standard approach speed. Once docked, please disembark through the main airlock. Our processing team is ready to assist you with quarantine procedures. Thank you for your cooperation." "Quarantine?" Nina asked. "They're worried about diseases? Or they want to separate us from our ship," Cross suggested darkly. Vren made his decision. "We dock, but I want a security detail armed and ready. If anything seems wrong, we get back to the ship immediately." The docking procedure was smooth and professional. Mechanical arms guided the Wandering Star into a bay that was specifically sized for their vessel. Magnetic clamps secured them gently. Atmospheric readings showed the air outside was breathable for most of their crew, though the oxygen content was slightly higher than standard. Vren assembled a team of 12 crew members from different species. They wore light armor and carried weapons, though he ordered them kept on non-lethal settings. No point in starting an incident if this really was just a diplomatic greeting. The airlock opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Beyond it stood 3 figures. They weren't human. They were androids, mechanical beings with synthetic skin that almost looked real. They were humanoid in shape, built to human proportions with pleasant faces and welcoming smiles. The lead android stepped forward and spoke in perfect Kalathi. "Captain Vren, welcome to Gateway 7. I am Coordinator Unit 47, but you can call me Henry. These are my assistants. Units 23 and 31, or Lisa and Kumar if you prefer names. We're here to make your stay as comfortable as possible." Vren studied the androids carefully. Their movements were smooth, natural. Their eyes tracked and focused like living beings. The technology required to build something this sophisticated was far beyond what the Council possessed. "You're expecting us? We've been monitoring the border sensors. We knew you crossed into human space 6 hours and 14 minutes ago." Henry's smile never wavered. "We always know when visitors arrive, and we're always ready to welcome them properly." "What about the 17 expeditions that came before us?" Vren demanded. "Where are they?" "Safe," Henry replied simply. "And you'll have a chance to meet some of them during your stay. But first we need to complete standard quarantine procedures. It's nothing invasive, just necessary protocols to ensure everyone's safety. Biological compatibility scans, cultural orientation sessions, that sort of thing." Nina spoke up from behind Vren. "How long does quarantine take?" "Typically 30 days. We know that seems long, but human biology is quite different from most species. We need to make sure there are no dangerous bacteria or viruses that could affect you, and that you carry nothing that could harm humans. It's for everyone's protection, 30 days. Vren didn't like it, but he understood the logic. His own people had similar quarantine procedures for new worlds. "What happens during these 30 days? You'll each be assigned comfortable quarters in species-appropriate sections of the station. You'll have access to our cultural database so you can learn about humanity and Earth. We'll conduct health screenings and compatibility tests, and you're free to communicate with each other, explore the public areas of the station, and ask questions." Henry gestured toward a corridor. "If you'll follow me, I'll show you to the processing center." The crew exchanged glances. Vren could see the nervousness in their faces, but they'd come this far. He nodded to Henry. "Lead the way." Gateway 7's interior was surprisingly pleasant. The corridors were wide and well lit, with plants growing in planters along the walls. The air smelled clean with a hint of something floral. They passed windows that looked out into space, showing the stars beyond. Other androids moved through the halls, some pushing carts loaded with supplies, others engaged in maintenance tasks. Everything felt organized and peaceful. The processing center was a large open space filled with individual stations. Each station had comfortable seating, medical equipment, and computer interfaces. Henry led them to their designated areas. "We'll process you by species for efficiency," Henry explained. "Each group will have specialized androids who understand your specific needs. Captain Vren, if you'll come this way, we have a Kalathi specialist ready for you." Vren hesitated. Splitting up felt dangerous. But Henry seemed to read his concern. "I understand your worry, Captain, but I assure you this is standard procedure. You'll all be in the same facility, just in different sections, and you can request to see your crew members at any time during the process." Against his better judgment, Vren agreed. He followed a different android, this one introducing herself as Sophie, to a private room. The room was furnished like a comfortable apartment, with a bed sized for Kalathi proportions, a bathroom, a small kitchen area, and a living space with a couch and a large computer screen. "This will be your quarters for the next 30 days, Sophie explained. "All meals will be provided based on Kalathi dietary requirements. The computer has access to our cultural database, and if you need anything, just say my name and I'll respond through the communication system." "What about my crew?" "They're being settled into their own quarters right now. Each species has a dedicated section designed for their comfort. Your Zentari first officer is 3 doors down the hall. Would you like to visit her after you're settled?" Vren nodded slowly. This wasn't what he expected. He'd prepared for combat, for interrogation, for threats, not for comfortable quarters and polite androids. "I'd like to start learning about humans. Can you access your database?" "Of course." Sophie moved to the computer and activated it. "What would you like to know?" "Everything. Start with their history." For the next several hours, Vren sat and learned. The database was incredibly detailed, filled with text, images, videos, and interactive displays. He learned about Earth, a planet that seemed designed to kill its inhabitants. Extreme weather, dangerous predators, diseases, natural disasters. Yet humans had not just survived but thrived. He learned about human evolution. They were persistence hunters who could track prey for days without stopping. They could survive on almost any food. They could adapt to nearly any climate. And they had something called endurance that was almost supernatural. While most species tired quickly, humans could just keep going. He learned about their history, wars, empires, revolutions, technological explosions. They'd gone from simple stone tools to space travel in just 10,000 years. Most species took 50,000 or more. The speed of their advancement was terrifying. But what disturbed Vren most was what he found in a section labeled Human Psychology. Humans had an unusual trait. They bonded with almost anything. They kept dangerous predators as pets, calling them dogs and cats. They gave names to their vehicles and ships. They formed emotional attachments to plants, to places, even to inanimate objects. The database called it adoption instinct. Humans had evolved to form strong social groups for survival. But that instinct didn't limit itself to other humans. They extended it to anything they spent time with. And once a human bonded with something, they would protect it fiercely. Vren sat back thinking. The missing expeditions. The empty ships. What if they weren't captured? What if they were adopted? A soft chime interrupted his thoughts. Sophie's voice came through the speakers. "Captain Vren, your first medical screening is scheduled in 1 hour. Would you like time to rest, or would you prefer to continue your research?" Vren looked at the computer screen, at the thousands of files still waiting to be explored. "I'll continue researching. But Sophie, can I ask you something?" "Of course, on the previous expeditions, the 17 ships that came before us. Where are their crews?" There was a pause, longer than an android should need to process a simple question. When Sophie answered, her voice was different, less artificial, more careful. "They're on Earth, Captain, living among humans, during your quarantine." The 30 days of quarantine passed faster than Vren expected. He spent his time buried in the human cultural database, learning everything he could about Earth and its people. He read about their wars and their peace treaties, their art and their science, their failures and their triumphs. And the more he learned, the more confused he became. Humans were contradictions. They could be incredibly violent, capable of creating weapons that could destroy their entire planet. Yet they were also capable of tremendous compassion, often risking their own lives to save complete strangers. They were territorial but welcomed outsiders. They were competitive but valued cooperation. Nothing about them made sense according to the standard models of civilization that the Galactic Council used. On the 15th day, Vren was finally allowed to meet with his crew. They gathered in a common area that had been designed to accommodate multiple species. Nina arrived first, looking healthier than she had in months. The Zentari woman smiled as she sat down across from him. "This place is amazing," she said immediately. "The androids adjusted the gravity in my quarters to match my homeworld. The food is perfect. And the database, Captain. Have you seen the section on comparative civilizations?" Vren nodded slowly. "I've seen it. Have you reached any conclusions?" Before Nina could answer, Cross arrived with 3 other crew members. The mantid warrior looked agitated, his forearms gesturing sharply. "This is wrong, Captain. All of it. They're too prepared, too organized. They knew exactly what each species would need. How long have they been planning this?" 400 years, came a new voice. Everyone turned. A human had entered the room. He was male, middle-aged by human standards, with brown hair starting to gray at the temples and kind eyes. He wore simple clothes, nothing official or military. He smiled and held up his hands in a gesture that the database had taught Vren meant peace. "Sorry to interrupt. I'm Jake Morrison. I've been assigned as your liaison for the next phase of your visit." Jake pulled up a chair and sat down casually, like he was joining friends for lunch. "I know you all have questions. I'm here to answer them honestly." Vren studied the human carefully. Jake looked relaxed, almost too relaxed, but there was something in his eyes, an intelligence and awareness that suggested he was far more dangerous than he appeared. "Where are the crews of the previous expeditions?" "On Earth, living normal lives." "Well, normal for Earth anyway." Jake leaned back in his chair. "I can take you to meet them if you'd like. In fact, that's exactly what we have planned. Your quarantine period is complete. All your health screenings came back clean. You're cleared to travel to Earth whenever you're ready." "Just like that?" Cross asked suspiciously. "You're letting us go to your homeworld?" "Why wouldn't we?" Jake smiled. "You came here to make contact, to learn about us. Can't do that effectively if you stay on this station. Earth is about 6 hours from here by transport ship. I can have us there by this evening if you want." Vren exchanged glances with his crew. This was it. The moment they'd been sent here for. "We accept. But I want to know something first. Why did no one from the previous expeditions return home?" Jake's expression grew serious. "That's a complicated question with a simple answer. But I think you should hear it from them, not from me. Come on, let's get you to Earth and you can ask them yourself." The transport ship was small and fast, designed more for comfort than intimidation. Jake piloted it himself, chatting casually about Earth as they traveled. He pointed out Mars as they passed, explaining how humans had terraformed it over the past 2 centuries. He showed them the asteroid belt where human mining operations extracted resources, and he talked about Earth itself with obvious affection. "I grew up in a place called Colorado," Jake said. "Mountains so tall they touch the sky. Air so clean you can see stars even during the day at high altitude. I've been to 40 different worlds now, seen things most humans never will, but I always come back to Earth. It's home." When Earth appeared on the view screen, Vren understood what Jake meant. The planet was beautiful. Blue oceans covered 70% of the surface. Green and brown continents, white clouds swirling in patterns, and everywhere lights. Cities glowed on the night side of the planet, connected by networks of illumination that showed the scope of human civilization. "Population?" Nina asked quietly. "About 15 billion on Earth itself," Jake replied. "Another 10 billion scattered across our other worlds and stations. We don't advertise our numbers to the Council. Figured it might make them nervous. 25 billion humans." Vren tried to process that number. The Kalathi homeworld had maybe 3 billion, and humans had been in space for only 400 years. How had they grown so fast? Jake brought them down to a city on the western coast of the largest continent. He called it New Vancouver. The city sprawled along a coastline, with buildings that reached toward the sky and parks that brought nature into the urban environment. Humans moved through the streets alongside other species. Vren saw Zentari, mantids, even a few Kalathi walking freely, no one giving them a second glance. "Welcome to Earth," Jake said as they landed at a public spaceport. "First stop is a cafe I know. Best coffee in the city, and someone wants to meet you." The cafe overlooked the ocean. Vren could see waves crashing against a beach, humans walking along the sand, children playing in the water. Inside the cafe, the smell of something rich and bitter filled the air. Jake ordered drinks for everyone, explaining that coffee was a mild stimulant that most species could safely consume. They sat at a table with a view of the water. Vren was about to ask Jake about the missing crews when a Kalathi woman approached their table. She was older, her gray fur streaked with white, but her amber eyes were sharp and clear. She looked at Vren and smiled sadly. "Captain Vren, I'm Sora. I commanded the third expedition that came to human space. That was 60 years ago." Vren stood immediately, his military training taking over. "Commander Sora, we thought you were dead. The Council stopped hearing from you after you crossed the border. We tried to send messages," Sora said, sitting down at their table without asking permission. "Multiple times. They were all blocked. Not by humans, by the Council. They didn't want the truth getting out." "What truth?" Vren asked. Sora looked out at the ocean, at the city, at the humans and aliens walking together on the beach. "That everything we were taught about civilization is wrong. That the Council's way isn't the only way. And that once you experience life here, you can never go back to what you had before." She turned back to Vren, and he saw something in her eyes he didn't expect. She looked happy, truly deeply happy in a way he'd rarely seen among his people. "Humans don't conquer through force, Captain. They don't need to. They conquer through something far more powerful. They make you feel welcome. They make you feel valued. They make you feel like you belong." Sora gestured to the city around them. "Look at this place. Humans and aliens living together, not in designated zones, not in controlled sectors, just living. My daughter married a human 20 years ago. My grandchildren are half human, half Kalathi. They're beautiful and they're happy and they have opportunities here that they'd never have under Council law." Vren felt something cold settle in his stomach. "You chose to stay. We all did. All 17 expeditions. 412 people who came here looking for threats and found home instead." Sora reached across the table and put her hand on Vren's. "I know what you're thinking. You think we were brainwashed or manipulated or that we're prisoners pretending to be happy. But I promise you it's none of those things. We stay because we want to. Because life here is better than anything the Council offers." "How?" Cross demanded. "How is it better? The Council maintains order, peace, stability across thousands of worlds. What can humans offer that's better than that?" Sora smiled. "Freedom. Real freedom, not the illusion of it. The Council tells you what to think, where to live, what job you can have, who you can associate with. Everything is controlled, regulated, organized. Here, you choose. You can be whatever you want, go wherever you want, love whoever you want. The only rule is don't hurt others." Jake had been quiet, letting Sora speak. Now he leaned forward. "The Council maintains order through fear and control. They keep species separated, resources scarce, and everyone competing for a limited number of spots at the top. It's stable, sure, but it's also a prison. Humans achieved faster than light travel through cooperation and resource sharing. We solved our problems by working together, not by establishing hierarchies." "That's impossible," Nina said. "Every stable civilization needs structure, needs authority." "Does it?" Jake asked. "Or is that just what you've been taught? Think about it. How many times have you had an idea that was shot down because it came from someone too low in the hierarchy? How many times have you seen injustice but couldn't speak up because it wasn't your place? How many times have you felt alone, even surrounded by your own people?" Vren didn't answer. He couldn't, because he'd felt all of those things many times throughout his career. He'd always assumed that was just how life worked. Sora stood up. "Come on, let me show you around. There are others from the previous expeditions who want to meet you. Talk to them. Ask them." Jake gave Vren and his crew 3 months to explore Earth. 3 months to see humanity at its best and worst, to understand what made them different, and to decide what they wanted to do with that knowledge. Vren accepted, though he sent regular reports back to his ship. He wanted the wandering star ready to leave at a moment's notice, just in case. But as the days turned into weeks, the urgency to flee began to fade. Vren spent his first week in New Vancouver, staying in an apartment that overlooked the ocean. The building was mixed species housing, with families from a dozen different worlds living in harmony. His neighbors included a human couple with 2 children, a Zentari professor, and 3 mantid artists who created sculptures in the building's shared garden. On his 3rd day, the human children knocked on his door. A boy and a girl, maybe 7 and 9 years old. They looked up at him with curious eyes and no fear. "Mom said you're from space," the girl said. "Can you tell us about your planet?" Fren had never been around human children before. He'd never been around any children much since Kalathi military training started young and discouraged family connections. But something about their innocent curiosity made him invite them inside. He spent an hour showing them pictures of his homeworld, telling them stories about Kalathi hunting traditions, and answering their endless questions. When their mother came to collect them, apologizing for their intrusion, the children hugged Vren's legs before leaving. The boy looked up at him and said, "You're really cool. Can you come to dinner tonight? We're having pasta." Vren went to dinner, and the next night. And the night after that. The family treated him like a friend, not an alien dignitary. They argued about politics at the table, laughed at bad jokes, and invited him to help with household chores. It was chaotic and messy and nothing like the ordered meals in council military facilities. It was wonderful. Nina spent her time at the University of New Vancouver, attending lectures and talking with professors. She messaged Vren after her first week, her excitement clear even through text. "Captain, they're sharing everything. Every research paper, every discovery, every technological breakthrough. There are no secrets, no classified information. They want everyone to learn and contribute. This is how science should work." Cross, the most skeptical of the crew, found himself drawn to a human martial arts academy. The humans who trained there welcomed him immediately, excited to learn about mantid combat techniques. In exchange, they taught him their own fighting styles. Cross messaged Vren after his first sparring session, his text short but meaningful. "They respect strength but don't worship it. They see warriors as protectors, not conquerors. I need to think about this." On his second week, Jake took Vren to a festival called Unity Day. The entire city celebrated the anniversary of first contact between humans and the first alien species they'd met, the peaceful Alari from a nearby system. The streets filled with music, food stalls serving dishes from 20 different worlds, and performances showcasing various cultures. Vren walked through the crowds, watching humans and aliens celebrate together. A human teenager taught a group of mantid youngsters how to dance. A Zentari chef served traditional food to a line of curious humans. Children of mixed species ran through the streets, playing games that transcended language barriers. At one stall, an elderly human woman was giving away small, handcrafted jewelry. She saw Vren and smiled, immediately making a bracelet in Kalathi colors. "For you, dear." "Welcome to Earth." Vren tried to pay, but she waved him off. "It's a gift. That's what Unity Day is about. Sharing what we have with each other." Later that evening, Vren asked Jake about it. "Why do you do this? Why welcome strangers so openly? Aren't you afraid of being taken advantage of?" Jake considered the question as they walked along the beach. "Sure, sometimes people take advantage. Sometimes our kindness gets thrown back in our faces. But we decided a long time ago that the risk was worth it. See, humans almost destroyed ourselves several times. Wars, environmental collapse, disease. We survived because we learned to work together, to trust each other, to build bridges instead of walls." He picked up a stone and skipped it across the water. "When we reached the stars and met other species, we had a choice. We could compete and conquer like the Council does, or we could extend that same cooperation outward. We chose cooperation, and yeah, it makes us vulnerable sometimes, but it also makes us stronger. The Council would say you're naive," Vren said, "that any civilization built on trust instead of hierarchy will eventually collapse. The Council has been saying that for 400 years. We're still here," Jake smiled, "and thriving, by the way. While they struggle with resource distribution and territorial conflicts, we've colonized 20 systems and established peaceful relations with species they've never even met." On his fourth week, Vren was invited to a town hall meeting. He'd learned that humans practice something called democracy, where citizens had direct input on decisions that affected their communities. He'd assumed it would be chaotic, but what he witnessed was different. The meeting covered the proposal to build a new mixed-species school. Humans and aliens spoke from the floor, raising concerns and offering suggestions. A mantid educator worried about ceiling heights for her people. A human parent asked about curriculum that would include multiple cultural perspectives. A Zentari engineer volunteered to help with design work. They disagreed, sometimes passionately. But they listened to each other. And when a vote was called, everyone accepted the outcome with grace. The school would be built, incorporating suggestions from multiple species. Afterward, Vren talked to one of the human council members. "How do you make this work? How do you get so many different voices to agree on anything?" The woman laughed. "Oh, we don't always agree. But we've learned that diversity makes better decisions. If everyone thinks the same way, you miss obvious problems. When you have humans, mantids, Zentari, Kalathi, and others all looking at an issue, you catch things that homogeneous groups miss." During his 6th week, Vren met with Sora again. She'd invited him to her home for a family dinner. Her house was filled with chaos. Her human son-in-law was cooking something that smelled amazing. Her mixed-species grandchildren were arguing about a game. Her daughter, a Kalathi woman named Kira, was setting the table while talking on a communication device about work. Sora pulled Vren aside before dinner. "I want to show you something." She led him to a room filled with photographs. Images of her life on Earth. Her wedding to a human man who had passed away 20 years ago. Her daughter's childhood. Her grandchildren's births. Family vacations to places across Earth and beyond. Friends from a dozen species gathered for celebrations. "This is what the Council can't offer," Sora said quietly. "Not the technology or the democracy or the freedom, though those matter. It's this: connection, family, belonging. The Council teaches us that our species' identity comes first, that mixing with others dilutes who we are. But humans showed me something different. They showed me that love expands, that family is who you choose, not who you're assigned. That belonging doesn't require sameness." At dinner, Vren sat surrounded by Sora's chaotic, loving, mixed-species family. They asked him about his life, shared stories about their days, and included him in their banter. The children taught him a human card game. Kira asked his advice on a work problem. Sora's son-in-law insisted he try 3 different desserts. It was loud and messy and nothing like proper Kalathi dining protocols, and Vren loved every minute of it. On his 10th week, Vren finally started to notice what had been bothering him. The defensive platforms, the military installations on Mars, the warships hidden in the asteroid belt. Earth wasn't just a peaceful paradise. It was a fortress that looked like a home. He asked Jake about it directly. "You're preparing for war." Jake didn't deny it. "We're preparing for the possibility of war. There's a difference. We hope the Council leaves us alone. We've made it clear we want peaceful isolation. But we're not naive enough to think hope is a strategy. If the Council decides we're a threat and sends a fleet, we'll defend ourselves. Could you win?" Jake looked at him seriously. "Yes, our technology is about 2 centuries ahead of the Council's. Our population is larger than most people realize, and we've spent 400 years preparing for this scenario. We don't want war. But if it comes, we'll win." The confidence in Jake's voice was chilling and completely believable. On his 12th week, Vren attended a ceremony that changed everything. A young mantid woman named Kyla, from one of the previous expeditions, was becoming a human citizen. Not as a subordinate or a guest, but as an equal member of their society. The ceremony was simple but meaningful. Kyla stood before a human judge and swore an oath to uphold human values of cooperation, respect, and mutual support. In return, she received full citizenship rights and responsibilities. Afterward, Vren asked her why she did it. "You're giving up your council citizenship. You can never go home." Kyla looked at him with the multiple eyes of her species, and all of them held the same expression. "Peace. I am home, Captain. My council citizenship was just a number in a database. My human citizenship is a place in a community. There's no comparison." On the last day of his 3-month stay, Vren received a message from Jake. "Someone wants to meet you. She's waiting at the council building in New Vancouver. Come when you're ready." Vren had learned about the council building during his time on Earth. It was where humanity's diplomatic coordination happened, where decisions about interaction with other species were made. He'd avoided it until now, preferring to see Earth through the eyes of ordinary people rather than government officials. But it was time to face the truth he'd been avoiding for weeks. The building was modern and open, with glass walls that let in natural light and gardens that brought nature inside. No guards stopped him at the entrance. No identification checks or security screenings. He simply walked in and followed the directions to an office on the top floor. The woman waiting for him was human, maybe 50 years old, with gray hair and sharp eyes. She stood when he entered and extended her hand in the human greeting gesture he'd learned. Captain Vren, I'm Linda Hayes, Earth's diplomatic coordinator. Thank you for coming. Vren shook her hand, noting the firm grip and direct eye contact. You wanted to talk. I wanted to be honest with you. Linda gestured to a chair and sat down across from him. You've spent 3 months here, talking to former council explorers, learning about human culture, seeing how we live. Now it's time for the conversation we should have had on day 1. Why didn't you? Because you wouldn't have believed me. You needed to see it yourself, to experience it, to understand that we're not lying or manipulating anyone. Linda leaned forward. Your council fears us, Captain. They should. Not because we want to conquer them, but because we represent everything their civilization is designed to prevent. Vren stayed silent, waiting for her to continue. The Galactic Council maintains order through controlled scarcity and hierarchical dominance. They keep species competing for limited resources, fighting for higher positions in the hierarchy. It keeps everyone focused on climbing the ladder instead of questioning why the ladder exists. Linda's voice was calm but firm. They claim it's necessary for stability, that without strict control, civilization would collapse into chaos. And you disagree. We prove them wrong every single day. Humans achieved faster than light travel through open collaboration and resource abundance. We solved our environmental crisis by working together, not by establishing strict hierarchies. We met other species and welcomed them as equals, not as subordinates or threats. Linda stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city. The council's stability depends on everyone staying in their designated lanes, accepting their place, never questioning the system. Our strength comes from breaking down those barriers, from mixing and sharing and cooperating. Vren thought about everything he'd seen over the past 3 months. The mixed species families, the open universities, the democratic town halls, the festivals celebrating differences. You're right. The council would see that as chaos. They do see it as chaos. But more than that, they see it as a threat. Because every explorer who comes here makes the same realization you're making right now. The council isn't an alliance of equals. It's a prison that convinces inmates they're free. Linda turned back to face him. We don't stop your people from leaving, Vren. We just give them a chance to experience an alternative. And when they see what civilization could be, most choose to stay. Why tell me this now? Because you deserve honesty. Every explorer before you got the same speech at the end of their stay. We explain the situation clearly. We tell them the choice they face. And then we let them decide. Linda sat back down. You can return to your ship and go home. File your report with the council. Tell them we're a threat or a paradise or whatever you think is true. We won't stop you. Some of your crew will stay probably, but the choice is yours. Vren felt the weight of that choice settle on his shoulders. What happens if I report what I've seen? If I tell the council that you're not a threat? They'll likely suppress your report just like they suppressed all the messages from previous expeditions. The truth is dangerous to their system. If council citizens learn that an alternative exists, that civilization doesn't have to be a hierarchy of control, many would want to leave. And the council can't allow that. What if I tell them you're a military threat? Linda smiled sadly. Then they might send a fleet. We'd defend ourselves and we'd win. But a lot of people would die in the process, human and alien both. We'd prefer to avoid that. Then what do you want from me? The truth, Captain. Whatever truth you decide that is. Linda stood and extended her hand again. You've seen our world. You've lived among us for 3 months. You've talked to people who made this choice before you. Now it's your turn. Stay or go. Either way, we'll respect your decision. Vren shook her hand and left the building. His mind was racing with thoughts, memories, possibilities. He walked through the city without any destination, processing everything Linda had said. He thought about his life in the council fleet. 50 years of service, dozens of successful missions, commendations for bravery and skill. He'd been proud of that life, proud of his rank and his achievements. But when was the last time he'd felt truly happy? When was the last time someone had asked him what he wanted instead of telling him what to do? He found himself at the beach where he'd watched the sunset weeks ago. The human children from his building were there, playing in the sand with a manted child and a young Zentari. They saw him and ran over excited. Vren, come build sandcastles with us. He sat in the sand and helped them build. They laughed when waves knocked over their creations. They argued about the best design. They worked together to make something bigger than any of them could build alone. And when they finished, they stood back to admire what they'd made together before the tide washed it away. The girl looked up at him. "Are you leaving soon? Mom said you might have to go back to space." Vren looked at her innocent face at the mixed group of children playing together without seeing differences. "I don't know yet. I'm trying to decide. I hope you stay," the boy said. "You tell the best stories." That evening, Vren called a meeting with his crew. All 12 of them gathered in his apartment. He looked at their faces and saw the same internal struggle he was feeling. "We need to discuss our mission," he said. "In 2 days, we're scheduled to depart. The council expects a report. They expect us to come home," Nina spoke first. "I'm staying, Captain. I've already submitted my resignation to the council fleet. The university here offered me a teaching position. I want to stay and help build something better than what we left behind." One by one, others spoke. Cross was staying, having found purpose in teaching martial arts and learning human combat philosophy. 3 others were staying to pursue research, art, and family opportunities that didn't exist in council space. In the end, only 4 crew members wanted to return home, including Vren. They sat in uncomfortable silence. "I won't force anyone to make a choice," Vren finally said. "Those who want to stay have my blessing. Those who want to return will come with me. Either way, we'll file an honest report about what we found here." The next 2 days passed in a blur. Vren said goodbye to the people he'd met over 3 months. The human family who'd adopted him into their dinner routine. The professors who'd shared knowledge freely. Sora, who hugged him and told him he was always welcome to return. Jake, who shook his hand and thanked him for giving Earth a fair chance. On the morning of departure, Vren stood at the spaceport with his 4 remaining crew members. 8 had chosen to stay, joining the 404 explorers who came before them. The Wandering Star was ready, her crew skeleton but sufficient. Jake was there to see them off. He pulled Vren aside for a private conversation. "Whatever you decide to tell the council, we'll respect it. But I want you to know something." Jake looked him in the eyes. "You're always welcome here. If you file your report and realize you made a mistake, if you ever need a place to belong, Earth will be here. You'll have friends waiting." Vren felt something break inside him. He'd spent 3 months watching people find belonging, watching them build lives based on cooperation and care rather than duty and hierarchy. He'd experienced more genuine connection in those 3 months than in 50 years of council service. And now he was choosing to go back to that old life. "Why do you do this?" Vren asked quietly. "Why welcome us knowing we might betray you, knowing we might bring a fleet to destroy you? Because isolation isn't safety, it's just loneliness. Because we believe people deserve a choice, and because sometimes the risk of opening your door is worth the possibility of making a friend." Jake smiled. "Safe travels, Captain. I hope we see you again someday." Vren boarded the Wandering Star. The journey back to council space took 3 days. 3 days to write his report. 3 days to decide what truth he would tell. The truth was simple but devastating. Humans weren't dangerous because they had superior technology or military strength. They were dangerous because they offered an alternative to everything the council represented. They proved that civilization could be built on cooperation instead of control, on abundance instead of scarcity, on inclusion instead of hierarchy, and they proved it so effectively that anyone who experienced it would choose to stay. Vren submitted his report to the council, along with a second document,